Hi guys, it's Julian today. I have messy hair, and I'm going to be talking to you about how to make a full, hard melodic techno track in the style of Possession, sort of like Shlomo, 999, 999, 999, Pawlowski, DYEN, that style of stuff. As usual, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI presets for the full track from this video. It's available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. Definitely go grab that. It really helps support me. And yeah, let's get started. Alright, first thing here, we're at 144 BPM, and at the top we have the kick, which sounds like this. So this is that style, a pretty hard kick like you're hearing in a lot of these tracks. The way it's made is it's two layers, so we have a kick. Pretty standard stuff. You can see I've just got that leveled out. There's no processing on it. It's kind of like I usually say, you just want to get a good kick. It's already got a lot of punch to it, and then it's just about leveling that out in the mix. And then underneath it, we have a rumble, which is being made using a tom. So that's kind of what makes this style a little bit different. To get these like really aggressive kind of rumble kicks, it's not just going to be that standard like reverb rumble that you guys see me make a lot. You want to use a tom for this. Like, I'll show you the sample I'm using here. So yeah, you can hear, it's just going to have like a little bit more of that sort of like boom in the sound. And so that works really well for this. And then what's happening here is we just have that playing 16th notes. You can see I've got an arpeggiator here. And then that's pretty much the sound. And then there's just a little bit of extra stuff that we do to it to kind of give it that a little bit more flavor. So the first thing here is just a bit of reverb. Here's without that. And with it, you can see it's really short. It's like that really short sides and decay time. You just want like a really quick little like, nothing too much, but this can really add a lot of fullness to the bass and a bit more atmosphere as well. Then we have this being sidechained to the kick. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Obviously, you probably wouldn't want this to just be like that, you want it to be underneath the kick. And then finally, there's just a bit of EQ. So the first one here is just cutting out the highs. There's without that. And with it, so you can hear this is important. You're not going to want to cut it too low. Like, just cutting off those very high highs is good. And again, it's just going to cut off like those like kind of frequencies that are just going to make it a bit messy. This kind of makes it feel more like a bass. And then I just have this, which is actually a little bit of a high-pass filter, cutting at 34 hertz. So this is one of those things, I talk about this a lot, but yeah, if you cut below like 50 hertz, I want to say, a lot of those frequencies we're not really hearing, we're mostly just feeling them. So what you can do is make a cut here, and you're going to cut out a lot of that low bass that you wouldn't even hear, but it can make your mix a bit messy. And then also it just makes your bass feel a little bit more like kind of, I guess, airy, you could say. Like, it kind of pitches it up a little bit. Here's without this. And then with it. And when I was referencing this with a bunch of different Possession tracks, this is essentially like what's happening in a lot of them. You just want to make sure you cut that because it's going to give it a little bit more just kind of air in the low end there. And then on the group of those, there's no processing. It's just the kick and the bass playing side by side. But we do have these filters here that just come in and out. Like this one, for example, is just for the intro. Just to bring everything in. This one is kind of going throughout the track, you can see. And that's also got a bit of automation on it here to kind of just make that disappear. But yeah, really simple. Just a bit of filtering to kind of work with the arrangement. You can see it also goes up and down at the end too. But other than that, we really don't need too much other processing because it's already hitting super hard. And this is something I do want to talk about as well. I think a lot of times people think hard techno means extremely distorted sounds, and that's not always the case, because really that distortion, and like if I was to put drum bass on here, essentially that's just to make the sounds hit harder. That's why people like it for the style. It's not actually that good, and it can make your track a bit messy, but the best of both worlds is to just kind of get a kick where you can have like the kick and bass playing side by side, and then we can still have plenty of saturation on the other elements in the track, but our main things like the kick and the hi-hats and that kind of stuff can still be just really clean and power through the mix. So then we have our percussion. So what's happening here, as you can see, it's actually like pretty straightforward. Now, again, kind of going back to what I was saying about keeping it cleaner with hard techno, you know, even though this is a more aggressive style of techno, we actually want to keep things pretty clean with the percussion. Like really just one element for sort of like each thing, if that makes any sense. So for example, like we have our main hi-hats. Just straightforward, just like this bright noise hi-hat, which is just some white noise going into a high-pass filter. And this 909 style hi-hat. We're not going to throw in like too many background loops or anything too messy, because we want to keep things like, we want to keep it to where you can kind of hear each individual one, and that comes through layering, but not just like layering, you know, like I said, like this hi-hat with a loop that has a hi-hat in it with like a hi-hat loop going. It's just having, again, like one very powerful hi-hat, one very powerful noise hi-hat. These rolls here. You know, rather than having a big, like, you know, like club sounds loop or something like that, we just have these little rolls. And it's filling that in there. And again, it's just going to keep the overall track feeling a lot cleaner. Because the kick and the synths are already really hard hitting. So, like, these can work like this. We also have this ride here, so that's, you know, pretty standard fare. And then we have these distorted filter percussions. And so these are adding a lot of character to the drums. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying too. Again, like we have all these really simple elements that we can just bring in something like this over top. And it's going to be a lot more effective to have one of these right here than to try and do this with like I said, stacking a bunch of loops or something. So the way these are made is it's these two different loops that I had actually from my videos, and I'll turn off the processing. It's actually 3 because you can see we have that. So we're just doing that call and response between those two layers, and then we have these effects on. So what's happening first is it's a low pass filter, and it's doing half notes. It has an LFO on it, so the filter's constantly moving. But then I also have automation on it. You can see that, yeah, we're constantly moving that filter frequency just to go up and down as well. So the LFO kind of, it's like the two different movements there. Having the automation and the LFO at the same time really brings this to life. And if we're talking about like making something simple and only having like 4 other layers of percussion around this, you know, this low pass filter alone is contributing to a lot of movement and ultimately making the track and this sound in particular very exciting. Then we just have a bit of echo doing quarter notes. And then some overdrive, which here's without that. You can hear it's very effective there. And then finally we just have a high pass filter. And yeah, so that's the percussion. Then on the group of those, the only thing is just this one EQ here, which is doing like a low pass. Again, just like an arrangement thing, but we don't need any group processing. And yeah, then we have these effects, which are pretty straightforward. You can see it's just a bunch of different effect sounds. These are all mine from my definitive track effects pack. But yeah, it's just 4 of these in here. Mainly I just wanted to have these to show you, like, obviously, you know, it's very simple, of course. Okay, little effect sounds, put some reverb, delay on them. But really just 1, how many to have, and 2, how sparse you want to have them, because I think it can be tempting to add a lot of different effects, but with this style of techno, you really don't want that many, and you'll notice really most of them happen here in this part when all there is just the drums. So like, yeah, that's something to keep in mind. You know, you want these effects for sure, especially when you have parts in the track that may be a little bit more boring because it's just the kick and the bass and the drums. But then once we get to over here with like the main synths, really not too many of these little background effects. Then we have the pad, which is actually 2 layers. So it's 2 layers, like I said. The first one is this granular synth. And so what's happening here is we're just playing D sharp, E, and C sharp. We're in the key of D sharp here, so just kind of following that. And then what's happening, it's really about the sound design with this one. So with this one, I brought this little vocal sample into the granulator here. But then what we're doing is we're playing this chord here, where it's playing the original note that we have mapped out, and a note an octave up. And the beauty of this is that with the granulator, each new note you play can see, every time we play a new note, it adds more lines to that. So essentially, each different note is doing like different movements with the granular synth. So to have these octaves, now you get this really detailed sound because you're having essentially these two layers of like jumping around the vocal. Another thing with this one is the way it's just these really long held out notes, you know, just like not too fast, nothing too crazy melodic wise, just some long held out notes that you can easily tell what's going on. It's not fighting for space with anything. And then that just has some reverb, high pass filter, and low pass, which brings it in and out. And then this auto pan as well, which is just making it kind of bounce off of the kick. And then for the second layer, we're using this disturbing fields. Now, this is a simpler, or pretty sure this is simpler. Yeah, so this is a simpler patch inside of Ableton. And then what's happening here, I literally just have that, and then it's just really all it's about. As you can hear, it's like just this cool kind of like evil, like demonic choir sound. And so that just goes really well underneath that granulator. I think the granulator on its own is a little bit too clean, but then when you add this, it really kind of sits under there nicely. Then after that, you can see, yes, there's a high pass filter and a low pass filter on that as well. And then we have the synths, which start with this lead. So here's the MIDI. Again, we're in the key of D sharp minor, so we're using, basically it's just D sharp, and that also is D sharp an octave up. Then F sharp, so the minor third, and then B, which would be the sixth. And then also here is just another B. So really, it's just kind of like playing with these cool intervals, and you know, that movement from na na na, which if you look at it, that's also all the notes from a B major chord. So it's not actually as like dark and evil sounding as you would think. But then for the sound with this one, this is just made with wavetable. It's a pretty straightforward super saw. I've just got one saw wave here. There's the amp envelope, so it's a little bit shorter. It's a little bit like you really get the attack on the note. And then I have this unison on the shimmer mode. So this just gives you like a really cool, here's without it. Again, here if we switch to like the classic mode, it's not as fat. So shimmer is really good for these kind of leads. Then we just have this quarter note echo, a bit of drum bus to make the sound like a lot fatter and kind of bring out that echo. I have a high pass filter, a sidechain, which is sidechaining it just to the kick like that, no rumble, and then just this low pass filter, which just brings it in through here. You know, just kind of makes the arrangement a little bit smoother, like how we have this part, and then we start teasing this here. We don't just bring it right in. Then we have the 303. So it's really simple, just two notes. And yeah, I honestly wouldn't use the 303 as much anymore. I mean, definitely like a lot of people are saying they're getting played out. I think with this style though, if you use one very sparsely like this, where it's just like that little and it's not like the whole track based around the 303, I think it can still work. And it's an interesting sound. There's a lot of sound design talk that could be had on these as well. So the way this one's made is it's just using operator. It's a saw wave. You can see there's the amp envelope. And then I have a bandpass on that. And the bandpass has an envelope. I also have the sign shaper. And then, so we're moving it with the envelope, but we're also got this LFO on there. And that's really important. If this just sits in one place, it's kind of boring. You want this to be constantly moving. So just having that LFO just slowly moving like that, it ensures that you're going to be able to, you know, have something just a little bit more exciting that isn't just the same exact thing over and over. Then we just have this amp on the boost mode. Here's without it. So you can hear that's pretty important. Then we have two echoes. The first one is just for stereo width. You can see it's on ping pong and it's really fast. So there's without that. And then with it. And then the second one is like a slower 8th note echo. We also have some reverb, and then finally just a bit of distortion. And then after that we have this lead. So this is using this kind of like more evil sounding scale. We can see we got like D sharp, E, and then F sharp. Like really straightforward. This is just an octave of D sharp. But yeah, so again, just like a nice kind of call and response. Like I feel like with these style of tracks, if you have a few different leads like this, obviously for one, it's good for me because I can show you a lot of different things in the video. But I think that it keeps it exciting. You know, these kind of tracks, of course, can get repetitive, especially because there's so much stuff like this coming out now. But if you kind of make a more interesting dynamic between the synths, rather than just like the same riff over and over and over again, I think your tracks are going to be a lot more exciting and they're going to stand out. Then we have this wavetable for the sound. So you can see, yeah, it's just a saw wave and another saw wave. On this one, we have a bit of pulse width, and the sync is turned up. And then I have a low pass filter, which has this envelope on it. Got the noise unison, you can see it's super heavy. You know, just really washing that out. And then finally we just have a bit of echo and drum bus. This one's pretty straightforward for processing. It's really about that sync, just kind of creating a more interesting texture with that. And then on the group of those, we also just have a low pass filter, which is just kind of bringing these in all the way through here. So I like to have something like this for the arrangement, like just this really slow bringing these in here. It's going to keep it exciting, rather than just giving it all away right at the start. You know, it's like constantly building tension through the track. And yeah. So that was going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, this entire template that you saw here. Everything is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. It really helps support me, so definitely go grab that if you like the video and you want to follow along and have your own project to work with. And yeah, thank you so much for all the support, everybody. Really appreciate it. And I will see you tomorrow with another video.